Hi, Jonas and Cam. It's Auntie Sarah. I wanted to show you a couple things. One, look right there. That's our new baby puppy, Charlie Brown. He's just hanging out, kind of taking naps, little dozes in the sun. There he goes. He's going to sleep again. And here's Django. There's Django. There he is, very excited and happy. Still. Let's see if we can get another good picture of our little Charlie Brown. There he is, napping. I'll send you some pictures. The other thing I wanted to show you, you can maybe see in the background there, I know the sun is bright, that is a sukkah. And we built it for the holiday of Sukkot, which is the Jewish harvest holiday. And I'm going to be sitting in the sukkah today, reading for you. I don't know if you've ever built one. This is the first time I've ever built a sukkah. So, we finished The Wizard of Oz, and now it's time for a new book. This was one of my favorite books growing up. I've read it to Max. But you know what's really cool about this particular book is that this particular book actually was Pappy's book. And you can see he wrote his initials when he was a little boy, and it should say MGR here. And we have an address from when your mom and I and Auntie Eve lived all together when we were little kids. There's even an envelope in here. I'm not sure what that envelope's all about, but you can see Pappy took a little crayon to this book, and you can also see this book is falling apart a little bit, so I'm going to be very gentle with it. All right, well, let's get started with Mrs. Piggle Wiggle. Now, let's see who wrote this. By Betty MacDonald. Boy, did Betty have an imagination. So there's sort of like, uh-oh, I just heard a kaplop. Let's go see what happened. I'm puppy sitting as I'm reading. Oh, it looks like Puppy just fell off a step. Now he's getting down. Can you see him? There he is. There, he's going to get down. All right, let's see about this. So Mrs. Piggle Wiggle also doesn't have a ton of photos like the Wizard of Oz, even less than the Wizard of Oz. So I really want you to use your imaginations while I'm reading this book. Hey, Charlie, you want to come sit on my lap? You gonna lay down there, buddy? All right, here we go. Here's one picture, as you can see. All right, Mrs. Piggle Wiggle. Chapter 1, Mrs. Piggle Wiggle herself. I expect I might as well begin by telling you all about Mrs. Piggle Wiggle. So whenever I mention her name, which I do very often in this book, you will not interrupt and ask, who is Mrs. Piggle Wiggle? What does she look like? How big is she? How old is she? What color hair does she have? How long is her hair? Does she wear high heels? Does she have any children? Is there a Mr. Piggle Wiggle? So these are all questions you might ask yourself. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle lives in our town. She's very small and has a hump on her back. When children ask her about the hump, she says, "Oh, that's a big lump of magic." Sometimes it turns me into a witch, she says. Other times into a dwarf or a fairy. And on special occasions, it makes me into a queen. The children are all very envious of the hump because besides being magic, it's such a convenient, fascinating place for wings. Charlie, I didn't know how challenging this was going to be to read a book with Charlie here, but he is now chewing on bushes. So I'll be right back. I'm going to get him a good chew toy. Let's see, Charlie. Let's have something else to chew on other than the bushes. Squeaky squeaks. Here, squeaky squeaks. Try some of those. All right, we got him all fixed up, and he's ready to go. So we were just talking about Mrs. Piggle Wiggle and the hump on her back, saying it was a convenient place for wings. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle has brown, sparkly eyes and brown hair, which she keeps very long, almost to her knees, so the children can comb it. She usually wears it on the top of her head in a knot or a bun, unless someone has been combing it, and then she has braids or long wet curls or long hair just hanging with a jeweled crown of flowers on top. One day I saw her digging in her garden wearing a jeweled crown with her hair billowing down her back. She waved gaily and said, "I promised Betsy," Betsy is one of her children friends, "that I would not touch this hair until she came home from school." And she went on with her digging. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle's skin is goldy brown, and she has warm, spicy, sugary cookie smell that is very comforting to children who are sad about something. Her clothes are all brown, and she never looks crisp, pressed because they're used for dress up. Now I can't find Charlie Brown. Charlie! She wears felt hats, which the children poke and twist into witches and pirate hats, and she doesn't mind at all. Sunday morning, she takes one of the hats off the closet shelf and gives it a few thumps, pulls it firmly down, fro and aft, so front and back, and wears it to church. She wears very high heels all the time, and she is glad to let the little girls borrow her shoes. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle has no family at all. She says that her husband, Mr. Piggle Wiggle, was a pirate, and after he buried all of his treasure in the backyard, he died. So she just as herself, and Wag her dog and Lightfoot her cat. The most remarkable thing about Mrs. Piggle Wiggle is her house, which is upside down. It's a little brown house sitting there in a tangly garden, and it looks like a small brown puppy lying on its back with its feet up in the air, just like Charlie Brown. I can hear he's drinking water. Now he's running in the grass. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle says that when she was a little girl, she used to lie in bed and gaze up at the ceiling and wonder what it would be like if her house were upside down. So when she grew up, she built her own house, and she had it built upside down just to see. The bathroom, the kitchen, the staircase are all right side up. They're more convenient that way. So she can easily see that you could not cook on an upside down stove, or wash dishes in an upside down sink, or walk upside down stairs. In the living room of her house is a large chandelier, and instead of being on the ceiling, it's on the floor. Of course, it's really on the ceiling, but the ceiling is the floor, so it's the floor, and the children turn on the lights and then squat around pretending it's a campfire. Hey, little buddy. How about you come say hi? Look at this little guy. Isn't he cute? Down he goes. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle says that her chandelier is the only one in town which is put to any real good use. Her bedrooms all have slidey boards in them because if you look up at your attic ceiling, you'll see the slanty ceiling when turned upside down. It makes a fine slidey board. So, also, all the wall lights are very close to the floor and handy for small children. For the first 5 or 10 years after the house was built, Mrs. Piggle Wiggle climbed in and out of her rooms over the high doorways, but now she has little steps, which are just the thing to practice jumping. She gives children chalk so they can mark on the rug how far they've jumped. Nobody knows how old Mrs. Piggle Wiggle is. She says she doesn't know herself. She says, "What difference does it make how old I am, when I shall never grow any bigger?" Mrs. Piggle Wiggle's dog, Wag, has puppies every once in a while, and so she keeps a long list of names of children who want them on the blackboard. A puppy may be like Charlie Brown. For Lightfoot, for Lightfoot's kittens have she has a long waiting list on the blackboard in the dining room. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle's backyard is full of big holes where small boys and girls dig for Mr. Piggle Wiggle's buried treasure, and her front yard is full of flowers which little boys and girls pick and place in jam vases in her living room or carry to their teachers. Every child in town is a friend of Mrs. Piggle Wiggle, but she knows very few of their parents. She says grown-ups make her nervous. For the first year after she built her house, Mrs. Piggle Wiggle lived there all by herself, except for Wag and Lightfoot, and she was very lonely. Then one dark, rainy afternoon, when she was baking sugar cookies and thinking how much fun it would be if she knew someone besides Wag and Lightfoot to invite to tea, she happened to look out her window. Oh boy. Charlie, what are you eating now? Charlie, come here, buddy. Oh my. Having a puppy is kind of like having a baby. Come here. Eat this, please. So it's dark and rainy. She's making cookies. And she looked out the window. Let's see what happened. She looked out her kitchen window, and there, coming up the street in the pouring rain, dragging a big suitcase, crying, was a little girl. Mrs. Wiggle wiped the flour off her hands, and hurried right out into the rain and invited the little girl in for tea. The little girl's name was Mary Lou Robertson, and she was 8 years old and quite fat, and was running away from home. She told Mrs. Piggle Wiggle all of this after she drank 3 cups of cambric tea and had eaten 7 sugar cookies. She said, I'm running away from home because I hate to wash dishes. All I do is wash dishes. I'm just a servant. Dishes, dishes, dishes. Wash, dry, put away. That's all I do. My mother doesn't love me at all. She isn't my real mother anyway. She probably got me from an orphanage just to wash her dishes. Oh boy, now Django's laying down and moving the camera. It's a wild place here today. Mary Lou began to cry again, so that the 8th sugar cookie got quite soggy before she finished it. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle said, isn't she your real mother? Mary Lou said, yes, she is, but no real mother would make you wash dishes. Wash, wash, wash dishes. Now that's a funny thing, said Mrs. Piggle Wiggle. I mean, you're hating to wash dishes so much because, you see, I like to wash dishes. In fact, I enjoy washing dishes so much that it causes me great sorrow. It causes that a cause of great sorrow to me is the fact that the only dishes I wash are for Wag, Lightfoot, and me. 3 or 4 dishes a meal, and that's all. When I wash dishes, Mary Lou, I pretend that I'm a beautiful princess with long, golden curly hair. Mary Lou's hair was jet black and braided into 2 stiff little pigtails, and with apple blossom skin and forget-me-not blue eyes. I have been captured by a wicked witch, and my only chance of getting free is to wash every single dish I have in the whole kitchen to make it sparkly clean before the clock strikes. For when the clock strikes, the witch will come down and inspect to see if there is a crumb anywhere, if there are pots and pans that have been put away, and if the silver has been thrown into the drawer, and if the sink has not been scrubbed out, the witch will have me in her power for another year. Mrs. Piggle Wiggle looked at the clock and jumped up. Oh, it's 10 minutes to 4, Princess. We have so much to do. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Mary Lou had jumped up and began carrying the tea things to the sink, and Mrs. Piggle Wiggle whisked them in and out of the dishwater, and Mary Lou dried them, and Mrs. Piggle Wiggle hurried as fast as she could to put the cookie things away. And every once in a while she would stop and say, "Hark, Princess, do you hear the thump of the witch's big gnarly cane?" Then Mary Lou, her braids bobbing up and down with excitement, would say, "I hear it, Princess, and it's coming closer and closer." Soon the kitchen sparkled and the dishes were washed and dried and put away, and every crumb had been swept off the floor. Mary Lou even curled Lightfoot's tail neatly around her legs and smoothed Wag's fur. Just before the clock struck, Mrs. Piggle Wiggle said to Mary Lou, "Princess, I must leave you now, but show the witch your work, and I hope that you will be freed." Then she went upstairs. Pretty soon down the stairs came a terrible old witch with a long black dress and a tall pointed hat and big black gnarly cane. Mary Lou was very scared until she saw the sparkly eyes of Mrs. Piggle Wiggle under the hat. She showed the witch the kitchen, and the witch took out the cookie pans and carried them over to the light to see if they were clean and dry. She got down on her hands and knees, squeaking like a rusty gate, to see if Mary Lou had swept under the stove. She felt inside the teacups to see if there was sugar on the bottoms, and she put on her glasses to examine the sink. Go, little puppy boy. Uh-oh, let's see what happens. But she could not find anything wrong, so she handed Mary Lou the key to the kitchen door and screeched out, "You are free, Princess, but I will get you again, never fear." The witch clomped back up the stairs, and in a few minutes, I hear a chewing of a puppy. And in a few minutes, Mrs. Piggle Wiggle came down. "Well," said Mrs. Piggle Wiggle, "did you see why I like to wash dishes?" Mary Lou said, "Oh, Mrs. Piggle Wiggle, that was the most fun I had ever had." Mrs. Piggle Wiggle said, "Of course you can have more fun than I, because you have so many more dishes to wash." "If I only had more dishes, I could take longer. I would be a princess with curly, yellow, long hair and apple blossom skin and blue eyes and a beautiful voice, and I would sing songs over the dishpan. Also, if I had more dishes, I would have the witch ride through the night on a broomstick and would creep out on the back porch to see, and I would creep out on the back porch to see if she was coming. I could hear her land with a thump on the roof, and I would slip upstairs to see if she was going to slide down the chimney or a thump down the stairs. Oh, there would be many exciting things to pretend, only if I had dishes." Oh. After a while, it stopped raining and the sun came out, and Mary Lou took her suitcase and went home. That night, her mother, it really was her real mother, of course, almost fainted when she came out to the kitchen exactly 27 minutes after dinner, and Mary Lou was sweeping the floor, and all the dishes were washed and dried and put away, and everything was immaculate. Mrs. Robertson rushed in and called Mary Lou's father, and he came out to the kitchen and pretended to fall on the floor with surprise. And then he said to Mary Lou's mother, "I like your new maid, madam. In fact, she's so much better than Tilly Slopwash, who used to be here. I think we should invite her into the moving picture show some early evening." Then Mary Lou told them all about Mrs. Piggle Wiggle, and Mary Lou's mother said, "Oh, I remember seeing that little odd house. She sounds like a charming friend, and if you are certain she invited you, you may go over there after school tomorrow." The next day, after Mary Lou went to see Mrs. Piggle Wiggle, she took her friend Kitty Wheeling with her, and Mrs. Piggle Wiggle was very glad to see them show up through her upside-down house and serve them tea and cookies. Kitty, her mouth full of cookie, "My worst trouble is bed making. I just cannot get them smooth. I'd much rather wash dishes like Mary Lou, but my mother won't let me change with my sister Sally, who washes dishes, until I've learned to make beds properly. Oh, I just despise to make beds." So until next time, we'll find out what Mrs. Piggle Wiggle's cure for Kitty will be. All right. Bye-bye. Talk to you later. Love you.